How you doing? I'm Sean Sherman. I'm the developer of the Reset System.
My name is Jonathan Lose, and I'm the Director of Education of the Reset System. Tonight we're going to talk about a concept that we utilize in the Reset Education protocol or program, talking about restoration and replacement. Those are interesting terms, but I think it's important because it predicates the whole basis of outcomes and results in the industry, whether it's the fitness industry or the rehabilitation industry from physical therapy, chiropractic, whatever the title may be. But basically a replacement strategy is getting outcomes based on intervention that you're putting onto the body, based on utilizing the available resources that are there. Okay. Whereas a restoration strategy is identifying the deficient resources, bringing those resources back online, and then putting intensity into the body and getting outcomes from that aspect. So when you look at replacement versus restoration, both are generating outcomes, right? You're getting results with your patients or clients, but one is doing so with the available resources, enhancing compensation, right? Whereas the other one is focused on recovery, right? And enhancing performance or enhancing outcomes by restoring function to those deficit tissues.
Right. So I think it's a really great general delineation and explanation of those two approaches. Would you say that the majority of the industry right now is using one or the other, or would you, in your estimation, say it's more of a 50-50 split, or where do you see the industry at with these two?
So I would argue that unless you're specifically looking for it, like looking for the true source of that motor or that movement dysfunction, you are utilizing replacement strategies. And I think it's a product of both necessity and just mistake. Necessity in terms of if there is a problem with the hardware, like a lesion in the nervous system somewhere, a break to the bone, a total rupture of a tendon.
So you're saying hardware, you're talking like the structural components?
Like the tissue components, yeah. Like either muscular, neural, or articular.
Yeah.
A replacement strategy, compensatory mechanism is all you have. If someone has a stroke, you're not going to be able to elicit some of the reflexes that may be there or try to restore normal motion, because normal now is whatever resources they have. But barring that, given someone that has integrity throughout the kinetic chain, looking at like there's no tears, no breaks, no major changes in structure, so surgeries, a replacement strategy or enhancing compensatory mechanisms, I think, is doing a disservice to the patient or client. I think it's up to the practitioner. The responsibility on them is to maximize recovery, restore function back to the tissues, and then you're still gonna get outcomes, but you're doing so by increasing the capacity of that organism or that body.
So I guess the argument that I think some people might have is, well, I'm doing a restorative process or a restorative strategy because I'm working on improving mobility, I'm working on improving stability, and like I'm improving these resources.
Right. And so again, I think I don't think I answered your question before. Is the industry doing that?
Sure.
So if you're looking at complex movement, right, compound movement throughout the body, if you want to identify, in order to make sure that you're on a restoration plan and not a replacement plan, I feel like I'm selling insurance, replacement versus restoration. But if you want to make sure you're on a restoration plan, you have to identify the links in the chain, right? So you have the kinetic chain, you have the possible components,
right?
And people argue all the time, if you train the chain, everything gets stronger. Right. And they're right. Everything gets stronger together. Not one thing gets bigger, but everything gets stronger together. And so you still have those deficits of limited resources.
Right.
So you have to do is identify in the movement component or in all the resources that are there to bring that up. And so unless you're looking at the most reduced component of movement, right? So we're not talking about taking gait and hey, you see there's some issue with like hip stability, and so you're going to take the ankle and knee out of it, and you're going to try to reduce it down to the hip. Unless you're breaking movement down to the specific joint, and not just the specific joint, but the specific joint plane, and looking at all components of the motor control that control that, right? So the tissue, the joint, the muscle, and the processing that happens there. Unless you restore that first, reset that component,
right?
You're
replacement.
You're doing a replacement strategy.
Right. So back to the question I asked, you kind of actually answered it. If someone said, "Hey, look, I'm improving mobility, I'm improving stability, and therefore I'm doing restoration," I guess I'm thinking is, you just kind of went over the components that make up the human moving system. They're not actually improving those resources. They're just noticing an improvement in those outcomes.
Right. And that's why it's misleading, because I can go in and I can do a range of motion, stretch them, throw some exercise on it. I can intensify the movement pattern and compensatorily, is that a word? I can elicit the compensatory mechanism and utilize those resources to get stronger and still get outcomes. Right. So my patient's happy, client's happy, on paper it looks good, I submit to insurance, through bill, great, perfect. But what do you do for the long term? Or in terms of when we're working with athletes, their ability to perform.
So that software deficit's still there, it's never been addressed, it's just going to come back and
they just put more RAM into the system to okay, let's use this example. It's like a mechanic working on an engine. Right. And you have a V8 engine, so you have 8 cylinders there, and 2 options of generating more horsepower out of that engine. You can either do a replacement strategy where you bore out the holes, get more airflow in there, add some nitrous. You can make modifications that definitely enhance horsepower, but that engine, if you're not checking for it, has 1 or 2 cylinders not firing. So that V8 is only firing on 6 or 7 cylinders, but you've done all these modifications and you've got outcomes. So that engine's actually running better than a regular V8. Right. And over here you have that V8, you take a second engine and you make sure all cylinders are firing, and you're going to have an increase in performance. But now if you take the two, you do the restoration strategies first, get everything firing, and then you do your compensatory aspects. Our goal is that I don't think we're ever going to get truly here. But if you can get close to there, you give the body more resources to use, and then you intensify.
Absolutely.
Now you're talking about, like you said, do you want good results or do you want awesome results?
Exactly.
And so I think that's important to take into consideration. It's you, the practitioner, that have to be accountable. Am I doing replacement? Am I doing restoration? And sometimes replacement is all you have. And sometimes replacement, there's a time and a place. But unless you're identifying truly where those dysfunctions are at, reducing it down to the smallest component, you're doing a replacement strategy.
So if you're not pinpointing the dysfunctions that are leading to compensation, which leads to all kinds of other mayhem, it's a replacement. Right. If you're able to identify those deficits, those software deficits, so that the body doesn't have to compensate, then it would be a restorative process. General. I mean, that's in a nutshell. Right. And we try to, and that's what we try to maximize. And I would argue that the reset system is an effective tool to identify those joint dysfunctions. I would agree. And
I would think that I think we've reduced it down to the smallest component.
I mean, I don't know how it gets smaller than. I think about the hip. 6 different positions. It's not a hinge joint. It's a ball and socket. So you have sagittal, frontal, and transverse plane. Very apparent that those movements are available: internal, external rotation, abduction, flexion, extension, adduction. Whatever I missed. So if the deficit is adduction, where's a good sense of working on extension for that person? Right. Like you're close, but. And
that's the first part of the reset system, is using the microscope to identify where the joint dysfunction's at.
Exactly.
And now, take the telescope and look at how do you integrate it back in the global pattern.
So I would say all the time, I was talking in terms of analogies. Do I use a sniper rifle or just like lob some hand grenades? I'd rather use a sniper rifle. Less people get hurt, hit the target. That's general or specific and goofy a little bit.
And it's fun on Call of Duty.
There you go. Cool. Good job, man.
Awesome. Thanks,
all right, thanks for listening.